I've been making videos on this channel for nearly 3 years, and it has been an incredible experience. What started out as a simple project to fill up my spare time turned into something I wanted to dedicate real time and effort towards. I've always had a passion for creating art and entertainment, and for a long time I wanted to work as a film director, which transformed into a hobby of editing videos for various YouTube channels, including this one right here. For about 14 years, I've created a countless number of videos in various genres and formats, but this channel is the first one where I felt like I've developed something that's genuinely polished and well crafted. Since March 2018, I've looked back at several different video games and examined how they stack up today, analyzing their design and game feel to determine whether or not it's still worth checking out. But we're looking back at today's subject for personal reasons. It's not a game, but rather a piece of software that is almost single-handedly responsible for kicking my creativity and desire to make videos into gear. I'm referring to a little program called Microsoft 3D Movie Maker. For the record, I'm not referring to Windows Movie Maker, the video editing software bundled with Windows XP and Vista, although that was also an important part of my video editing career. No, Microsoft 3D Movie Maker, or just 3DMM for short, was one of several programs released under the Microsoft Home banner, a selection of multimedia, personal productivity, and education programs that were often shipped with copies of Windows beginning with Windows 95. 3DMM was part of the Microsoft Kids subset, which also featured applications like Microsoft Creative Writer, Microsoft Fine Artist, and a bunch of games based around the Magic School Bus. The program was built on BRender, a graphics engine created by Star Fox developer Argonaut Software, which was also used in Carmageddon, Croc Legend of the Gabos, and other games. The animated cutscenes were created by Jarnaguan Productions, and the models and 3D backgrounds were made in Softimage by Illuminate, both of which have closed down since the program's release. Now, I normally cover the development history of my subjects in these retrospectives, but info on the development of 3DMM is incredibly sparse, likely due to the relative obscurity of the program. There is a Making of 3D Movie Maker video accessible within the program, but it doesn't really contain any interesting information, as it's more of a let's tour the office and chat with people movie, and the tiny video resolution makes it hard to identify things. The only noteworthy thing to talk about is that 3D Movie Maker was the software that introduced the infamous Comic Sans font to the world. According to the font's creator, Vincent Conair, he originally created the font for Microsoft Bob, but didn't finish it in time, and the font was adapted by the 3DMM team and later included in subsequent versions of Windows. Otherwise, there aren't many details known about its development, so let's just dive right into the program itself. When you first open 3D Movie Maker, you're shown a cutscene introducing McZ, the eccentric host of the program.
My name, if I may present myself, is McZ. Nice to finally meet you face to face.
McZ was voiced by Mike Shapiro, who's more well known as the voice of Barney and the G-Man in the Half-Life series, although if you live in the United Kingdom, you might be used to a different voice for McZ.
Hey, let's go see a movie. Come on, it might be funny, maybe scary. You pick.
The only other character you'll meet here is Melanie, McZ's assistant voiced by Ann Christensen, who has a handful of listings on IMDb, but nothing I'm familiar with. These two are your guides as you explore the theater, a movie theater / studio that houses every single tool and activity that you can play with. You can explore the theater by clicking around on the screen, which can take you to various rooms, activate an event, or just play this noise. I think this navigation system was added to help kids get around the program, similar to how Microsoft Bob was designed, but ultimately it feels unnecessary, and you can just navigate through a menu via the map anyway. It is, however, the only way you'll get to see more of McZ, which, depending on your interpretation, is either a good thing or a terrible thing. McZ will show up in various rooms of the theater, either explaining what you can do in them if you click on him, or doing some random animation. If you've never used this program before, you're probably busy trying to process how terrifying McZ's design is. I don't know why Microsoft thought a freakish blue man with a phallic nose, dead Muppet-like eyes, and stupid teeth would be a fitting mascot for a children's software, but what do I know? This wasn't McZ's debut appearance, however, as he previously appeared in Creative Writer and Fine Artist acting in a similar role. I haven't used these programs myself, but while researching them, I noticed that McZ inserted himself into a bunch of famous artworks, including Pablo Picasso's Guernica, which actually makes a lot of sense. But let's take a look around the theater and see what you're able to do. First is the theater area, consisting of the ticket booth, lobby, and the theater itself. There's nothing of note in the first two rooms, but the theater lets you watch any movie you've created with the software away from the editor. This is a great feature, especially because movies are saved in a format that only works with 3DMM, meaning there's no easy way to open and play a movie outside the software without screen recording. In addition to your own movies, 3DMM comes with projects created by the development staff which have varying degrees of quality and scope. Some are pretty impressive, showcasing the potential of the program, while others look like they could have been made in 15 minutes by a non-expert. But really, that speaks to 3DMM's strengths. It's powerful enough to create something remarkable, given enough time and effort, and simple enough for those who don't care for grandeur and just want to make a motion picture. On that note, the movie-making tools are located backstage, which consists of 3 rooms: the projects room, the ideas room, and the studio. The projects room is more or less the tutorial section, as Melanie guides you through the basics of creating movies and working with actors, props, and 3D words through hands-on lessons. Melanie gives you step-by-step instructions on various techniques you can use when making your own films, but you're forced to follow Melanie's exact instructions if you want to learn everything. The Project Room movies are incredibly silly when taken on their own, since they're designed more for showing what you can do in the program rather than to be successful movies. Take a look at this one called Dialogue, for example, which teaches users how to add dialogue and talking animations to their movies.
I'll trade a magic trick for a vase.
Oh, I don't know.
I'll show you my best trick ever.
Okay, you've got a deal.
Now that's true cinematic gold right there. The Ideas Room, as you can guess, helps users come up with ideas for movies and contains 2 functions, the first being the Splot Machine.
Great! Let's whip up a movie!
This machine generates a random scene, camera angle, actor, prop, and music track and cobbles them together, and if you see a combination that you like, you can immediately go to the studio and start working on it. You can individually re-roll elements if you don't want to change everything, but personally, I've never felt that the Splot Machine was truly inspiring as it doesn't provide solid context for what you're looking at. Then there's the Talent Book, which contains profiles on the actors available to use in your movies, including wacky biographies and descriptions of their ideal roles complete with images of their costumes. The Talent Book is a bit better at generating ideas since it contains actual scene descriptions, even if the actor biographies are absolutely ridiculous. For instance, did you know that Augustine here is actually from ancient Rome and managed to survive to this current year of 1995 by shrinking in size and sealing himself in a bottle? Thing is, the Talent Book isn't available immediately, as during the opening cutscene, McZ accidentally loses the pages when traveling to the studio. Pages are hidden around various rooms in the theater, and you find them by hovering your mouse over objects and clicking. This is the only real game-like element in 3D Movie Maker, a treasure hunt that basically boils down to finding clickable objects, and your only reward besides reading the actor bios is being able to access the Talent Book inside the movie making tool as well, so that's neat, I guess? Speaking of, let's enter the last room of the building, the studio, and finally start making some movies, because, after all, that's what we're here to do. The studio only contains one noteworthy object, the toolbox, which is what allows you to make and edit movie files. The movie making process is incredibly simple, due in small part to the limited yet still versatile toolset at your disposal. The first thing you need to do is select a location where your movie's current scene takes place. You can pick from a handful of scenes like a spooky mansion, a mysterious cave, and an airplane cabin, and you can also choose which camera angle you want to use, then switch to a new one when the moment calls for it. Every scene is a series of pre-rendered static images, so if you want your movie to feel more dynamic, you'll have to make inventive use of camera angle choice or start looking into custom assets. More on that later. One thing I've always found incredibly disappointing about 3DMM is the lack of variety in the scene choices available to you. If you want to make a movie set in a jungle village, a scientist's laboratory, or inside a shopping mall, then great. But if you're looking to make a western or war movie, the game doesn't have the resources to accommodate that, so unfortunately you have to either get really creative or come up with something else. Now that you've chosen a scene, it's time to add objects and characters. When you select an actor or prop, you can place them anywhere you want in the scene and then give them an action to perform, such as talking, thinking, and growing bigger for some reason. Then it's just a matter of clicking on your actor and holding down the mouse button to record the animation, as well as dragging your mouse if you want them to move around the screen at the same time. 3D Movie Maker sets an actor's position and an actor's animation differently, so you can move an actor to a different area of the scene while preserving their current animation, which can be pretty handy. The software can also create 3D words by typing in text and animating it just as you would an actor, letting you make titles or credits with ease. Now, just from looking at this footage, you've probably noticed something. This software runs at the speed of molasses, and I should clarify that this is not a hardware issue, this is how the program is supposed to run. I believe it's running at 7 frames per second, and while this obviously makes these movies very visually unappealing, I think I understand why this frame rate was chosen. Because you can move actors with a full range of motion in 3D space, including going up and down, animating at a normal frame rate of 24 FPS might cause kids, who, let's remember, were the target audience, to get disoriented and accidentally move actors in weird directions. Rather than make the animation process complicated, the developers probably just let the end result suffer in terms of viewability, which isn't a great compromise when you're talking about a movie-making software, mind you, but whatever. Something I think is really cool about animating actors, however, is how they interact with the scenery. As I said, these scenes are pre-rendered images, and they don't have any hard-coded collision except for the floor, meaning that actors can just walk through walls and objects like they're not even there. However, the software creates the illusion that these are actual 3D spaces, as actors aren't always in front of the scenery. If they walk behind something, they'll genuinely appear to be behind it. According to Foon on Twitter, when the artists rendered the backgrounds, they also rendered the depth values of the scenery relative to the camera, meaning that actors and props that are far enough away from the screen will be rendered behind objects in the foreground. Again, this is accomplished with nothing but a 2D image and some clever graphical rendering techniques, which I think is incredibly impressive. Once you have actors in your scene and make them do stuff, your next step is likely to add some sound effects and music. 3D Movie Maker comes with a number of sound effects ranging the gamut from ambient noises to natural sounds to physical impacts and so on. I recognize several sounds that come from stock libraries, and honestly, most are so hyper-specific that there's no reason to use them at all. The same goes for the voice clips, of which there are a handful pre-built into the software which are cheesily voice-acted and make absolutely no sense out of context, making them almost useless for making movies.
The dollar figure may be in the trillions.
Ooh, this place is spooky.
Those bullies won't bother me now.
Thankfully, 3D Movie Maker allows you to import your own sound effects and voice clips, and you can even record directly into the software if you have a microphone connected. This is a good alternative if you want to incorporate dialogue or custom sounds into your movie, though of course, because this is an old program, the audio gets compressed to hell and back when you bring it in. Hello, how can I help you? Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. We actually don't allow you to bring guns in here. Hello, how can I help you? Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. We actually don't allow you to bring guns in here. Ow!
Wow!
The software also contains a selection of MIDI music that includes short stingers and full-length tracks, which encompass a wide breadth of styles and genres, though you can also import your own MIDI files. You can place tracks anywhere on the timeline and even chain them together or loop them, or if you want no music, you can always turn it off. Many of these compositions are ingrained in my head, and I still find myself humming them all these years later, so full credit to Ted Allen, Stan Lepard, Jerry Schroeder, and Randy Budnikas for making these songs. Those are all the basic functions of the software, and putting everything into practice, it becomes clear that 3D Movie Maker is simplistic almost to a fault, and contains a number of limitations on making movies. Non-linear video editing is difficult, since changing a character's animations in the middle of a scene erases everything they do afterwards, so if you're a perfectionist, like me, you'll be undoing some of your work because one bit of movement looks off to you. Obviously, the program wasn't meant to create masterpieces, and you still have to accept at least some imperfection with old software like this, but still, the inner critic in me always notices when a scene doesn't look quite right. The animations available to you are also noticeably lacking, with many movements that you'd think would be a no-brainer missing. Most actors have a kick animation, for example, but there's no punching, giving you little options to work with if you want to make a fight scene. And if you're not importing custom sounds or recording your own voice, making a coherent story through the sound design might be challenging. But these problems also reveal a principle that I find fascinating about 3D Movie Maker. That is, how the limitations and shortcomings breed creativity rather than hinder it. There's a theory that when you have a limited set of resources to make something, that's when the artist's creativity really shines, since it forces them to use everything to their fullest ability. Whether or not that's applicable for every situation is debatable, but in 3DMM's case, I think this theory mostly holds true. If you think about it, the limitations are mostly only a hindrance if you go into the software already expecting to make something specific. That approach doesn't always work because you're bound by what the software comes equipped with, but if you go in not knowing what you want to do, then seeing the available resources can help jumpstart the process. When I was a kid, I rarely knew what I wanted to make before starting the program. I just booted it up, chose a scene, and went to work, figuring it out as I went along, and over the years, I've made a ton of movies this way. So hey, why don't we watch one now? For your viewing pleasure, I've made a chilling science fiction horror story that's not for the faint of heart, but also a tale of friendship and loyalty. It's a movie called
Golly, I sure do love science. Jesus Christ!
Brian.
What? Dale, is that you?
Yeah, dude, it's me. I need your help.
What happened to you, man? You're just a skeleton.
I know I am. It was the craziest thing. See, I was just standing and thinking in the middle of a bridge when all of a sudden... And that's what happened.
Wow, that story is absolutely ridiculous.
Just shut up and fix me.
Fine, whatever. Okay, I think I know how to help. Come over here. Okay, so this here machine's gonna give you a brand new body in no time, buddy.
Are you sure this is safe?
Nope. Now alls I have to do is press this button here.
You know, I'm starting to have second thoughts about this.
It worked!
What the hell? Why do I look like a robot now?
Because you are a robot now. I made an invention that turns human skeletons into robots.
That is the stupidest invention I've ever heard of.
My mama said it was a cool invention.
Brian, wait. Brian? Brian, I don't feel so good.
And that's really about it. The software is incredibly simple at its core, so there's not much new to talk about once you've completed a movie. That is, except for the expansion packs and mods. 3DMM has 2 official expansion packs themed around different properties that add new scenes, actors, props, sounds, and music. The first was a Japanese exclusive pack based on the anime Doraemon, and the second was Nickelodeon 3D Movie Maker, a standalone pack featuring characters from famous Nickelodeon cartoons like Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life, Ah Real Monsters, and, well, that's it. These are merely resource packs, as there's no new movie making features, with the only thing worth talking about is how the Nickelodeon pack contains an entirely different theater section hosted by Stick Stickly. Over time, 3D Movie Maker became abandonware, with no further expansions and the discontinuation of the Microsoft Kids brand, but a small, dedicated community has been keeping the software alive. Through the efforts of websites like 3dmm.com, the program has been saved from falling completely into obscurity, as fans have not only created an installer that helps run the game on modern computers, they've also released modding programs to allow for custom content. The most important of these is V3DMM, or Virtual 3D Movie Maker, which acts as both a launcher for the game and a mod loader, letting you easily start the software with whatever content you want. And speaking of mods, there's a surprising amount of custom actors and props that you can inject into the game with V3DMM, usually from famous cartoons or video games. Using these mods isn't my preferred method of getting more out of 3DMM, since it basically transforms the program into something entirely different, but for those who want to make the ultimate crossover animation, I guess there are worse options out there. So that's 3D Movie Maker in a nutshell, a quaint, archaic, yet charming movie making software that is certainly aged beyond belief, but which has definitely earned a place in my heart and the hearts of many who used it back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It is absolutely not the go-to creative tool if you're interested in animating movies, and in fairness, that was never the intention. 3DMM was designed with simplicity and ease of access above all else, so that children could express their creativity through a program that, sure, had limitations, but also gave users just enough freedom to satisfy them. It knows exactly what it wants to be, and making something truly unique with it requires a lot of ingenuity, thinking outside the box, and above all else, effort, as it should. Even today, you'll see plenty of people creating and releasing movies made with the software that take advantage of the tool as best they can. Seeing what the 3DMM community is capable of doing is astounding, especially if you're so used to seeing it as a simple program that provides the most basic of results when used as intended. Maybe this is all hard to understand unless you've actually used 3D Movie Maker, and I'll admit, a lot of my perspective on this software comes from the eyes of someone who grew up using it. This was a very important application during my formative years and was something I frequently booted up during my elementary school days. I remember my dad made a simple movie where he animated English letters to help me remember the alphabet, and when you have memories like that, it's hard to ignore the personal connection. When I think back on 3D Movie Maker now, I can see how it not only helped me shape my creative mind, but also introduced me to several tenets of working in an artistic medium that I still believe in today. This program taught me that making a piece of art requires dedication and a willingness to acknowledge and correct mistakes, and that the quality of the tools you use does not define the quality of the finished product. And above all else, it sparked my initial interest in not just making movies and videos, but in telling stories and communicating ideas, thoughts, and feelings through creative endeavors. Without 3D Movie Maker's influence, it's highly likely that this YouTube channel wouldn't exist, so in that regard, this may just be the most important topic I've ever covered. Jokes aside though, 3D Movie Maker may be outdated now, but back in the day, it was a watershed moment for me and the path I ended up taking in life, and trust me, the Cloud Connection journey is far from over. I can't say for certain where we'll end up from here, but one thing's for sure, it's gonna be one hell of a ride, and I can't wait to take it with you.